In this video, we're going to look at adding a relative month column to your Power BI date table. Firstly, let me describe what it is. A relative month column is where this month is 0, last month is -1, next month is +1, and so on. And it provides a very simple mechanism to work with dates based on the months. And let me just show you a couple of examples. Here we've got a measure calculating the rolling sales over the last 12 complete months, and with a relative months column the formula can look something like this: calculate sales, dates relative month is less than 0 and it is greater or equal to -12. Nice and simple, very easy to use. Another common use case would be if in my date table I've got this kind of month-year combination that I want to display, and I can use the relative months column to get the sort order of these dates correct. A third use case is just to provide a filter so that this visual and that slicer are always presenting the last 12 months. There are other ways to do that, but I find the relative month very useful. And a fourth use case, which I would use quite often actually, would be, let's say for example I want a dynamic x-axis here, so that if I select a given month in the slicer, it always shows me, say, the 12 months up to and including that selected month. And the way I do that is using a separate rolling months table linked to my date table through the relative months column. So let's have a look at see how we create that. My date table in this particular case is in Power Query, but the principle would apply just the same if you have a date table created in DAX. And the secret to it is to create an index value for every single month-year combination that is unique and that increments by 1 as you go from one month to the next. And then basically calculate that for every single date, calculate it for today, and the difference between the two is the relative months. So the year month index, as I call it, is simply 12 times the year plus the month number. And what I've done is, just to ease things, I have a query in my model which just returns today's date. I could type this formula into my M code if I wanted, but I find it a lot easier just to reference date today. So if we go to our date table, we've got two columns, the date column and the relative day column, and we're going to add a relative month. So if I go custom column and let's call it relative months. So the year month index is 12 times the year, which will be date dot year of my date plus the month number, which will be date dot month of the date. And let's just take a quick look at what that looks like. And here it gives a very useful but rather user unfriendly kind of number. But what we need to do is do the same calculation for today's date and subtract that from this. So let's go back in and edit the formula. So all we need to do is subtract the same thing for today. So minus 12 times date dot year of date today minus date dot month of date today. And that's it. That's our relative month column. And the last thing I want to do is just change that to a whole number. So at the end, just before the last parenthesis, I do comma int 64.type.